Hello, and welcome to Direct Approach with Wayne Moorehead, an exclusive podcast brought to you by Direct Selling News. Host Wayne Moorehead interviews some of the leading marketers and innovators in direct selling to help your marketing and branding teams motivate the field, inspire and engage customers, and further your brand's reach and impact. In today's episode, Wayne is joined by Jeff Bell, CEO of LegalShield, the leading provider of legal, privacy, and identity theft protection services in the United States and Canada. Since his arrival, LegalShield has grown to over 1.8 million members, protecting and empowering over 4.6 million lives. Jeff's career has spanned such diverse brands as Microsoft, DaimlerChrysler, and Ford Motor Company, where he's held various executive positions. With such an interesting and varied career, there are no shortage of topics that Wayne and Jeff touch on in this episode. Jeff and Wayne cover a lot of ground, including the difference between your corporate vision and mission, how to define both, and why neither of them is intended to be fixed. Jeff will share his successful product development and expansion strategy, which focuses catering to your core audience while still reaching out to the masses. Jeff has so much wisdom to share, including several key tips on how to create the types of high standards your competition must position itself against, as well as how to embrace technology to enhance your brand. Best of all, Jeff shares the one key career philosophy he's been using since college. Here's a preview. Put yourself in a position to say yes. This is an inspiring and thoughtful episode with one of the most dynamic and diverse executives in direct selling. Make sure to download and dive into this incredible content. Before we dive into the episode, I want to remind everybody that our fall virtual Direct Selling University event begins this Monday, October 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern. The event is all virtual, spans over 4 days with 30 speakers and hundreds of insights. We don't want you to miss a minute of it, so make sure to secure your spot for next week and to also have access to replays. Registration is free for all active direct selling executives. All you have to do is visit dsu2021.com and register today. We look forward to seeing you next week at DSU. And now, a word from our sponsor.
You're always looking for a way to move the needle in your business. Give your distributors the power of productivity in the palm of their hands. Getting more sample products to customers and prospects is what makes a measurable difference in your growth. Now Technologies makes it simple for you and for your distributors, from concept to fulfillment. Your phone is truly your office. With the NowTech app, the key to growing a direct sales business is in the palm of your hand. To experience the power of the app, reach out to info@now-tech.com.
Let's get started. Here's your host, Wayne Moorehead, and today's guest, Jeff Bell, CEO of LegalShield.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of DSN's Direct Approach podcast. I am your host, Wayne Moorehead, and I am very excited today to be joined by Jeff Bell, LegalShield's CEO. Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, Wayne, thank you for having me.
Well, very cool. I'm excited to dig in. And I spent a lot of time prepping, watching some interviews and reading articles on you to just get a little bit more information, on the personal side, some really interesting questions to ask you. And I found a couple similarities in our youth experiences.
Okay.
So one, we were both paper boys.
Okay.
I don't know if we're allowed to say paper boys. Is it paper person?
But,
Paper delivery person?
Whatever you intend,
Okay.
is not to be offensive in any way.
Correct. And the second is Eagle Scout.
Hey.
So I actually want to ask you a couple of questions about these experiences. For me, in elementary school, I delivered the Rockville Gazette. That's how I started my paper delivery career, which was a once weekly local paper. And then moving into junior high, delivered the Washington Post. So every day, as you know, doesn't matter the weather, doesn't matter if there's a holiday, there's no days off. So waking up at 4:30 in the morning to get the paper out. And my parents may or may not have let me drive the car prior to me having a license to, on some of those colder or inclement weather days to get the paper out. And as an Eagle Scout, it was a goal. It was something I always wanted to do. But there was also the added incentive or potential penalty of I couldn't get my driver's license until I got my Eagle Scout. So got it very early on, but again, was always something I wanted. And as I've gotten older, I've looked back on these early experiences and realized the incredible impact that I think they've had on me, how they've helped shape my, work ethic, the way I tackle projects, kind of the way I show up. Talk to me a little bit about those experiences that you've had as either an Eagle Scout or delivering papers, early in those mornings in Ohio.
Well, first off, I should say that my first job was selling flower and vegetable garden seeds door to door. And so that was very early on. I was either inspired by or motivated by my parents, but I started into that. And then I started, like you, to deliver promotional newspapers once a week, sort of a form of early advertising, direct to the home advertising, if you will. Our next door neighbor in Centerville, Ohio, was in charge of distributing the papers to the paper boys for our general neighborhood area. And so I had seen that, and I asked, wow, I'd love to be a paper boy. And so sort of got on the waiting list because all the routes were taken. And then one day, knock on the door, and if you're still interested, a route's available. It wasn't my immediate neighborhood, but it was sort of an adjacent neighborhood. And so for the Dayton Daily News and the Journal Herald, which delivered on Sundays, I was the paper boy for probably around 45 homes. And of course, there's the responsibility of doing it after school, before football practice for me. I just would do the route. It took between 45 minutes probably was appropriate. I deliver all. What I found to be most interesting, of course, is you had to collect the money. They didn't mail it into it. You collected the money because then you paid for the papers. So immediately I understood this concept of, what is a dealer? A dealer is different than a broker. A broker, everything's a pass through. A dealer actually buys something, holds the inventory risk, and then sells it. And then they keep the difference. And so this was very much an entrepreneurial experience for me because I had to collect the money, and then I would then in turn pay for the newspapers. The other thing was knocking on the doors of the houses in my territory that did not take the paper. And, so there's a little sales element there, hi, I'm your neighborhood paper person. And, would you like to join up? Fondest memory. My good friend, Dr. Robert Sperry, lives in LaConner, Washington by serendipity, and I'm here in Kirkland, Washington. We've known each other since the third grade. He was staying over on a Saturday night, and I said, hey, I've got to deliver papers on Sunday morning. It was an afternoon route, except for Sunday mornings, and it had snowed. And so the two of us, got on our bikes, and snow on the ground, bundled up. The papers are always much thicker on Sundays, and we headed out and we did it together. And about halfway through, he was convinced that his bike was deficient to my bike in terms of its ability to keep up and handle the snow. So we switched. And as it ended up, I thought it was a good deal because I thought that bike was way better in terms of the thing. So I'll never forget, we were racing home once we had delivered the papers to try and get back to a warm bed and breakfast on Sunday morning. And I only have fond memories. As far as Eagle Scout, my father was an Eagle Scout. And so I was familiar with that. And I was impressed as a child. I saw his medals. He was also in the United States military. He served as a captain in the Army, a communications officer. And so I'd seen his medals. And, again, we can call it what you will. I was in awe of that, and I thought it was cool. So I learned about it. And on my 11th birthday, the day you're eligible to start scouting, I was at my first meeting. It was on my birthday. And so I was very driven. I loved the outdoor activities, but I was very disciplined on the merit badges. I think it was the first demonstration of my achievement personality. I mean, it said exactly how long it could take to do these things. And I just got into it. I loved the summer camps. I loved the hikes. I ended up going to Philmont with two of my troop mates out in for I guess was almost a 2-week hiking, backpacking, experience, and just loved everything about it. And I will also go on to say that then I have 3 sons. For the first 2, it was very difficult because we were living overseas and scouting wasn't culturally relevant. It wasn't available. But when we moved back to the States, my 3rd and last son, Matthew, it was a possibility. And, I didn't push it on him, but it's something that he demonstrated some interest. All of them had done Cub Scouts with my wife and maybe Indian guides. I think it's changed. I think it's called Y guides now. They had done some of that as well, but he decided to do it. And, I then actually found that there was an invitation, an opportunity to become involved with the committee for the troop. I never was the scoutmaster, but I was able to go on events with my son and see him grow and mature and be there for the other scouts as well, to counsel them and guide them. And he ended up also becoming an Eagle Scout. And so I can say that I have the generations pridefully of Eagle Scouts in our family. And, the discipline, I would say, the respect for self and for others, I know that, we talk about hazing in fraternities and sororities mostly, but I saw that a little bit when I was a younger scout, and it definitely was formative in my own anti-bully perspective. And then when I had the chance to be both a patrol leader and then a troop leader, I had a 0 tolerance. I did not see that building any character at all. I mean, there are ways to build character, and hazing someone is not one of them, in my opinion. Feel the same way today as the leader of a company.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Luckily, I didn't have any of the hazing experiences, in my troop. It was truly a pretty amazing experience, really formative. Again, I look back on it so fondly. And to your point, those characteristics that I learned around goal setting, around achievement, around making commitments, I look back on it and realize again, I think it's impacted me a lot longer than even my involvement, in scouting was. And back to, kind of working at an early age, as I'm the parent of 3 children as well. And, they're growing up a little bit of a different life than I grew up, but I'm trying to find these experiences where I can, make sure that they learn some of those same lessons, that they develop some of those same values around commitment, around showing up. I had to collect as well, as, 10, 11-year-old kid was really tough, knocking on your neighbor's doors and, asking them to pay their bill. But again, it taught me a lot. It taught me how to interact with people, how to deal with different personalities and kind of find, a common goal or, achieve a common end. I want to jump into your career for a second. You've had a really impressive career, extremely impressive. 2 master's degrees, you went to Wharton, you went to Johns Hopkins. You've, led or worked on some of the most iconic brands that are out there, ones that have enormous cult followings. I didn't want to steal any of your thunder, but tell us a little bit about your career and the path that led you into direct selling and ultimately to LegalShield.
Yeah, so I would say that I have evolved a general strategy of putting myself in a position to say yes. And when I talk as a mentor to younger people, generally I mentor people that are younger than me, not necessarily, the youth, but of all ages, I say, look, put yourself in a position to say yes. When I was in undergraduate at Kenyon College in Ohio, there's no way that I had a plan of what I would be. Now, I do understand that if you wish to be a doctor or a lawyer, there's a path for you. But even there, I mean, you could go into medical or law school and say, well, I think I want to, work with kids as a doctor, and then you end up as a podiatrist. You go into law and you think, I want to be a defense lawyer, and you end up as a tax lawyer. I mean, there's different paths that people go by, even when they think they've got a clear career path. So, going through graduate schools, I tried to just keep things open. I tried to keep open all possibilities, and, did a lot of interviewing when I was coming out of graduate school and looked at a lot of different possibilities, partly because I had worked at the Department of State, and I had also worked for nonprofit trade associations when I was in Washington, D.C. coming out of college. And that didn't necessarily direct me to a specific thing. Why did I choose Ford Motor Company? Well, I was looking at Coopers and Lybrand, which is now PricewaterhouseCoopers, in their strategic consulting business. It was going to be in DC, which was a city that Colleen and I knew well. I was looking at Lever Brothers, which is now Unilever in New York City. I was very interested in Worthington Industries in Columbus, Ohio, which is a company that rolls metal for propane tanks and stampings for automobiles in Columbus, Ohio. And then there was this Ford Motor Company. And, they all were really, I think, outstanding opportunities. Ford said, we know that we are a finance-driven manufacturing company. We want to become a customer-driven marketing company. And that was music to my ears. That was a passion for me. And so when I went to Ford Motor Company, it was in part because we were expecting our first son, Joshua Gerald Murphy Bell. And in the hospital, after he was born, a giant bouquet of flowers and, those cookies on sticks came from Rick Lewicki, who was in human resources at Ford Motor Company. And that sealed the deal. I mean, that kind of human concern just said to me, this is the right place. We knew we were going to have a baby. Both of our families were in Ohio. So compared to the East Coast, it felt better, but it wasn't in Ohio. It was in Michigan, and it just was right. And so at Ford Motor Company, I really just developed. I was in a marketing leadership program, one that my friend and colleague, Mark Fields, joined pretty much at the same time. He stayed with Ford and was an outstanding chief executive officer at Ford Motor Company, leading the company to their most profitable years ever. After I spent some time in Europe, where, again, Ford, thank you for the investment, allowed me to be a managing director in Ford Spain. Prior to that, I was an executive director over Central Europe, getting some general management skills. I returned to Ford, did work on the web, and then there was a bit of a transition. Some leadership went from Ford to Chrysler. One of them was my mentor, Jim Schreier, and he asked me to come and join the firm to run advertising and marketing for Dodge, Chrysler, and Jeep. And so it was an offer, quite frankly, that I just couldn't refuse. That gave me the opportunity to really focus again on advertising and marketing. Did the grab life by the horns. That thing got campaigns for Dodge and for Ram. Repositioned Jeep to, be the go anywhere, do anything brand. Only in a Jeep was the tagline that we brought back for Dodge. Dodge is like, the best, backyard hamburger you've ever grilled. It's like an American diner. It breaks the rules, but not the law. I always used to describe Dodge as John Travolta and the Urban Cowboy. He got his ass kicked by Scott Glenn in the beginning, but man, he came back and kicked some ass in the end. That's Dodge. Absolutely. Tough trucks and muscle cars, right? And then last there was Chrysler. Chrysler, honestly, is a great brand. It's kind of accessible luxury, excellent engineering, excellent design. And I would say that Olivier Francois, after I had left the company, nailed it with the tagline "imported from Detroit." That's a beautiful line. I was so jealous. I love that. Come up with that one. But after I did the advertising, Dieter Zetsche was reorganizing the company, DaimlerChrysler, and he wanted to have someone responsible for each of the brands. And I was asked to take on Jeep. And what that meant as a general manager, vice president, and general manager is that I had product planning, I had brand management, I had the profit and loss, for that division. And it was at that time that I came up with a very simple motto: sell more Jeeps now, get new Jeeps fast, and build brand pride. And that brand, that pride is not only for clearly the owners of the Jeep mark, but also for the dealers. And this will be the first part of the answer to your question about direct selling. I grew up in automotive, and automotive does not sell directly. It sells through independent, critical word, automotive dealers. And, I was taught very early, you don't tell dealers what to do. You inspire, you motivate, you inform, and try and guide dealers. But if you try and treat them like they're an employee, they'll just focus on used cars or service, or they'll go get another franchise, right? So, I learned early on how to look on the positive side of sales leadership as opposed to, Alec Baldwin in Glengarry Glen Ross, if you remember that, famous threatening type of
course
speech. So had the chance to do the Wrangler Unlimited. People complained that the Wrangler didn't have a back seat. We extended the wheelbase by 11 inches. I did that in working with the plant manager and with the program engineer, Craig Love. That then led to the natural question. I asked, why don't we have a 4-door Wrangler? And people were very offended, like that would undermine the integrity of the Wrangler brand, and it would be a betrayal to Jeep. And I just kept pressing, because what I learned was I turned it back on them. People modified Jeeps already with longer wheelbases. It was better climbing. Shorter is not better. And so we just had to make a 4-door version Rubicon ready. And I did have the honor of launching the trail rated brand, the Rubicon version of the Wrangler as well, which included so much of the aftermarket authenticity of off-roading. And that definitely helped us when we did introduce the 4-door Wrangler, which, was a unmitigated success. I mean, a massive success. And
it's all I see on the road now are the 4 doors.
That success in a way led to offering me the chance to be the vice president and general manager of Chrysler and Jeep. Some super experiences. Again, just getting myself in a position to say yes, to opportunities along the way.
I love that. There are a couple of quick questions on it. Again, I'm such a brand geek and marketing geek. What was it like, working with the Jeep brand, especially the Wrangler brand, which is probably the oldest and most iconic, brand of Jeep? Did you feel a responsibility? Was there pressure from the community? I mean, it is tribal. I mean, it is a pretty tight community. Even, I don't drive a Wrangler, but I have friends that have had them over the years, and drivers will wave at each other, as they pass. It is this amazing tight-knit community. Was there additional pressure, or did you feel like, you could take the baton and really run with it and stay true to the Jeep brand and spirit?
Well, I learned some incredibly, incredibly valuable lessons when I was the head of Jeep. People, I just listen to people. I've always found that starting a new position, it's important to just listen to as many people with as many perspectives as possible. And in listening to the longest tenured engineers, going and visiting the manufacturing plant, where it may surprise people, but when people build a vehicle like the Wrangler, they love Jeep Wrangler. When they are building Jeeps, they love Jeep. That it's not true for every brand and every vehicle, but in going to that plant in Toledo, Ohio, listening to what they had to say, listening to owners. One of the things that Jeep was doing, and they were questioning whether they should continue it, something called Camp Jeep. Every year they were putting on a huge owner revival, a playground where people could bring their Jeeps, they could drive new Jeeps, they could drive their Jeeps on courses that we created. We had all kinds of fun activities, and we did it all the time that I was there. But you listen to Jeep owners, and what you fundamentally come around to is a Jeep must be capable of doing things off-road that other SUVs cannot do. That's the key. And that's what led to trail rated. And so what we agreed was not every Jeep had to be trail rated, but every Wrangler, every Liberty, every Grand Cherokee, every Commander, even when we did the Compass, when we did the Patriot, every one of those had to have a trail rated version. And so that was a level of engineering integrity that kept it real. The thing that you also learn is that's the core. About 20% of Jeep owners take their vehicles off-road. And that's 4 times more than people who have just SUVs from Mercedes or from General Motors or Toyota or whatnot. But that's the core. And so you had to make sure that you understood what they wanted. It's what led to the expansion of the Wrangler brand, as an example. We found that they loved the Liberty, which has now been returned to the name Cherokee as a vehicle. But to expand to the masses wanted that truth, that authenticity, but they probably weren't going to go off-road.
True.
And
Yes.
so the issue is that you don't need to pretend. A lot of people will be like, well, all these other SUVs, they're pretenders and we should do that. And my position was no, you stay true to the core and you expand to the masses. And it ended up being a very successful strategy.
Absolutely. Stay true to your core, drill really deep in that category, absolutely own it. Then that kind of gives you permission to extend into a little bit. But yeah, people, even if they don't go off-road, they're buying a Jeep for those associations, for that feeling, those emotional benefits. And I think that trail rated is incredible, not just from an engineering move, but also from a brand move. So, essentially creating your own standard that then the competition needs to really position itself against. So again, I think it's brilliant. It positions you and depositions them all at the same time. You also mentioned about putting yourself in a position to say yes. And I think that's so important really at any point in our careers. And it's something that I wish I had done more of early on. I think far too often we wait till we feel ready to say yes to a new opportunity or a new, role or position, but we're never truly going to be ready to do a job we've never done before. And I know it sounds a little, cliche to invoke Jack Welch, but I remember, reading in his book Winning a long time ago when he was put over the turbine engine business. People were asking him, what on earth do you know about turbine engines? And he said, my job's not to have all the answers. My job's to have all the questions. And I think if you approach opportunities and saying yes that way, it definitely makes that next leap, that next rung in the ladder less intimidating, knowing that you don't have to have the answers, but you need to look critically at what's going on, within the business unit, within the product, within the category, within the channel. And when you have a good, broad understanding of that landscape, you're able to make really educated and analytical decisions. So I love that, putting yourself in a position to say yes. Again, even to this day, it's something that I need to do more and more of. So what ultimately led you into LegalShield? So making that leap, and did you have any reservations leaving, more of a traditional path and jumping into the direct selling channel?
Well, so after, I left automotive when I was recruited to go to Microsoft and work on Xbox. And the one thing that I'll point out there is that I took the same mindset from Jeep and applied it to Xbox. And that was, everybody said, well, the Xbox, when I arrived, the Xbox was a shooter box because all the popular games were shooting things. And sometimes, aliens and sometimes, people, but it was a shooter box. And I was asked to broaden its brand appeal and to obviously grow the number of units being sold. And yet people talked about hardcore gamers. Only hardcore gamers liked the Xbox. And I immediately recognized, and I'm not going to lie, Jeep is like Harley Davidson. You've got to get to know the core, okay? And in the same way for Xbox, we had something that was created by Krista Carter and Larry Herb called the MVP program. Most valuable player. And so we had statistics on who was playing the most, on the Xbox. And so we created this, and it was a feedback group, and all kinds of fascinating insights. Did they play a lot of games? Yeah. Were they good at it? Yeah. All kinds of fascinating insights. One, partners of serious gamers knew that they were a serious gamer and don't want to change them. But we did hear repeatedly they'd love to find things that they could do with them. Now, that was the insight for Date Night. So we created a campaign called Date Night, which was the start of the Xbox marketplace for television shows and movies. And once we did that and it started to really take off, that led to a conversation. I was introduced by Bill Gates to Reed Hastings, who was a brand new board member at Microsoft, had this little startup called Netflix. They were sending discs out, but they were talking about beginning to stream stuff online. And they wanted to be added to Xbox Live. Xbox Live was much better than the Sony and the Nintendo alternatives. And so we had more power, more technology, and we had 4 million subscribers to Xbox Live Gold at the time. So there was a whole evolution there from a single insight of just listening carefully that led towards adding more than just games onto the platform. we settled in on music and sports as the natural next extension from doing well in games like Call of Duty or obviously Halo. And that led then to conversations. I was asking about Guitar Hero because I was also looking to move beyond the controller. What other form functions were available to expand the possibility. And I learned from one of my colleagues that the founders of Guitar Hero were very bitter. They'd been forced out, quite frankly, I think by Sony or by Activision, and they were going to start their own new thing. And that they were struggling because they didn't want to just do a guitar. They wanted to do a whole band. And they were struggling with the hardware. Well, one of the things that people don't really know, and perhaps today because of the Surface, it's self-evident, but Microsoft's always been good at hardware because it was always in the mouse and keyboard business. There were other interfaces that it was doing to support the ecosystem. So we leaned in and we were able to work with the founders of Rock Band to get right the drums, the bass, the guitar, and the mic for that game. And we had an exclusive with them for a couple of years. And that changed everything because we then were talking about the family is playing together, literally. And it was beyond the controller. And then here's the most powerful boom. And that is we use the Xbox Live platform to allow people to download new music packs. And I got to say, up until LegalShield, if I died, I was going to say, I feel like I made a contribution to society by introducing the Beatles to a new generation. We had the Beatle pack that came in and it was a huge success. We had the Green Day pack and we did all kinds, had the Ramones. Anyway, we did all kinds of stuff. As far as then the sports, we really just went to EA and, quite frankly, just, paid some Benjamins to get exclusive content for Madden, did some exclusive launches, and then also on FIFA Soccer for Europe. And we did extremely well with that. And it just grew the Xbox 360's brand, and it grew our sales until we were number one over the PlayStation, as well as over the Wii. And, the games didn't hurt. Gears of War was supposed to do 3.5 million. We were able to get to, I think, 15 million copies now. Halo 3 was a massive successful launch that we also stayed true to our core as we expanded into these other areas. So again, I would say that that's another example of where we did not sell Xbox, even the studio games like Halo, we did not sell them directly. We were working with GameStop, we were working with Target, we were working with Walmart. And while I did set up a Xbox.com as part of my responsibilities, we sold everything through that site through our partners. We set up basically retail through them. So when I left Microsoft, quite frankly, I didn't do the corporate thing. I worked in venture capital, and I was a venture capital investor and worked with startups. And it was at that point, after getting my second MBA, quite frankly, learning about how technology was advancing, how you could do so much that used to cost millions, you could do for pennies, that I was contacted about joining a LegalShield. And whether I had heard of something called prepaid legal. I said, no. They said, well, you basically pay a monthly fee and you can talk to a lawyer. I'm like, oh, I remember that at Ford Motor Company. It was offered as a benefit. And of course, that was our competitor, MetLife, who bought the Hyatt Legal Services. And it was offered as an employee benefit. And they're like, yes, that's it. And then obviously the courtship began. And I said yes because I was in a position to, and I fell in love with the mission. I fell in love with the services, and I fell in love with our volunteer army, our independent marketing and sales associates.
That's amazing. There were so many interesting experiences, corollaries that seem to really have prepared and kind of led you into, the perfect role. You leading an independent workforce in services and powerful brands. You mentioned the mission of the company and falling in love with the mission of LegalShield. I think that's one of the things that really characterizes your time there at LegalShield. LegalShield is really helping to push them to be mission driven. What does it mean to you, and how is that different from how other companies approach their day to day? But what does being mission driven mean to you?
Well, I want to go back to the general premise. You start with the core, you expand to the masses. And the core truth is Harlan Stonecipher had a personal experience that led him to believe that most Americans did not have access to the justice system, that they did not have access to legal representation, advice, and counsel on an equitable and on an affordable basis. And so he started the company. And so that's the truth. And today our mission really is no different. We want to provide services to people that are affordable so that they can live a just and secure life. You know, we are against those things only being available to the highest bidder, to only those people that have money. You know, lawyers are not for rich people. Lawyers are for every citizen. That's the way that our founding fathers intended it in the United States, and we operate in Canada. The same is true there. It is under law, not under force, not under bullying. And we've all felt that. You know, I like to ask, I'll ask you, Wayne, have you ever in your life said, I want to talk to your supervisor?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
I'm at 100%. I ask almost everyone I meet that question, and 100% of the time people say yes. That's why LegalShield exists. Whenever you have that feeling that it's not fair, that it's not just, and the other party is ignoring you or using power, which, by the way, power can be silence and ignoring you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When they have power and you don't, then you don't feel full as a citizen. You feel compromised. And that's why LegalShield exists, is to make sure that we have an equal playing field. Okay. That we talk about what's fair and just, not what the power dynamics would be. Sometimes governments can be bullies. Sometimes companies can be bullies. Sometimes your neighbor can be a bully. Now, it's not just about bad things. The other thing that I love about our mission is that we want to not only protect, we want to empower people. And we're trying to overcome what I think most of us know is right, but we still don't do it. You know, this is a psychological challenge. And the Greeks called it akrasia. And it's basically knowing what is right to do, but still not doing it. Case in point, getting your last will and testament done, getting your medical directive prepared, not because you're sick, but because you'll be ready when you get sick. You know, having a power of attorney for financial matters. We all know that you should do it, but we don't do it. Why? It's a psychological barrier, right? We've got to overcome that. In the same way, should you sign an agreement, a contract, a document without having a lawyer review it? We know that the answer is no, you should not. We know that you would be better to have a lawyer review the document, but we don't do it. And so the biggest challenge that we face is helping people in some ways recognize how to be empowered. And again, it's getting on the front foot by having a law firm in the palm of your hand, which is what LegalShield does. We have an app that allows you to be in touch with your lawyer, your law firm. The law firm does not change in Utah. Okay. It shorter and shorter. That is your law firm. Okay. You may work with different lawyers within the law firm. Why? You may have a question on family law or estate planning or traffic or a civil question or a criminal question. Life is full of law. It either happens to you or it's going to happen through you with LegalShield. So being able to put that empowerment in your hand, you know, I'm feeling stressed. Why? I've got a problem. I wonder if I should ask a lawyer for advice and consultation. And it doesn't cost any more than the $24.95 per month that is your membership in the community. That is a radical concept. It is. It's still radical. We're coming close to 2 million members. We should have 20 billion. We should have 200 million. You know, I mean, we still have not hit the tipping point, but that's why it's all about that mission that drives us with energy towards continuing to try and protect and empower more people.
Well, that's incredible. So was that mission really in place and very well defined before you came in, or was it a process that you had to go through with your team?
You know, it was not. This is what's amazing. Now, I would say that it was visceral, right, for Harlan Stonecipher.
Sure.
Right. I mean, he talked about justice.
The spirit of it was there.
There's no question. You know, one of my favorite quote is Harlan Stonecipher says, on the side of the Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. in the United States of America, it says equal justice under law. But there's just one problem with that statement. It's just not true. People get just as much justice as they can afford. And I just love that. I mean, I memorized it. That's how much I love it. I love the alliteration. I love the play on just and justice. I just love everything about that phrase. I think it's one of the most brilliant phrases ever. But I sat down with my team and the president of the division, of both network and of our employee benefit direct sales division, with our head of marketing and operations. And I just asked, what is our vision? And they're like, well, I said, is it written down? No. Everybody write down, what is our vision? Darnell Self, the leader from the field, our executive vice president, an independent associate who's been the head of our field development, was there. And everyone wrote out a vision. And I collected it all. And then I just read them aloud to everyone. And then we just kind of started, there's some good there. I don't know about that, and we ended up and we drafted something. And then I said, doesn't need to be perfect, needs to be close. We set it aside. Mm-hmm. So then now let's do the mission. So now, given that this is the vision, a vision, by the way, is always out of reach, but never out of sight. So now what do we do on our mission to drive us towards it, right? And everybody.
Yeah, the mission is kind of how you're going to achieve the vision, what you're going to do to make that vision a reality.
Exactly. And so everybody did the same thing, exercise, wrote it down, brought them together, talked it through. We have evolved it and refined it over time. Same for our values. I'm not a big believer that your value statement as a culture should be honest. Well, what's the alternative? I mean, right. We tend to focus on things like join forces. We go higher together, live passionately, do work that you love to do every day, not that you have to do it every day. Make sure that we're continuously improving, that even when things are good, we can make them greater. Those are our values as a culture, that we have extreme ownership, that, I love to here's how I define extreme ownership, articulated by Jocko Willink, a great book. If you're driving down the street on a snowy day and you see next to a mailbox where the door is open, there's a body laying on the sand of the snow that's been plowed, just laying there. Do you keep driving? Or do you stop? Extreme ownership says, whatever you're doing in life, you stop. When you see something that's not right, or you see something that could be better, you take a moment, you take some ownership, right? And you need to think back to whatever. You don't have to be a doctor to stop and find out if everything's okay. It doesn't look okay. It's the old see something, say something. So we wrote it down, we've continued to refine it. And I feel very, very good about that as a part that attracts and also retains people into our business.
Absolutely. And you made a really interesting point there when you said that these aren't fixed. You need to revisit these. They're going to evolve over time. Vision is, as you mentioned, should always be a little bit out of reach. It should be, what success looks like 5 or 10 years down the road. And so as you start approaching, the achievement of that vision, you need to move the goalpost again. You always need to have something that you as a company and a group and a tribe are striving for. So I do think, every few years it's important to re-examine this. And I also think it was really important that you brought the team in. They're going to feel more ownership. You talk about Jocko's extreme ownership. I love Jocko's podcast. Involving them is going to make them feel ownership. It's going to help them roll it out, to all of the teams that they have there. And on that point, how have you operationalized the mission? How do you weave it into everything you do? Is it something that, you recite at the beginning of meetings? Is that kind of that drum that you're beating all the time, just to make sure that gets driven into the business and the minds of the employees?
And I know, and again, sometimes, I'll share with you something that my good friend Keith Ferrazzi taught me, and that is that just because it's purposeful doesn't mean it's inauthentic. I love that line. I'm going to say it again. Just because it's purposeful doesn't mean it's inauthentic. So if you and I are not getting along, and we need to get along, and we learn more about each other's personality motivations and how we tick. We learn a little bit more about each other's personal lives. We spend time not talking business, but about just each other, right? That is a purposeful effort to make things better. That doesn't mean that it's not true. I mean, a skeptic might say, well, you weren't getting along because you don't get along and you shouldn't get along. No, just because it's purposeful doesn't mean it's inauthentic, right? And in the same way, to your point, I do recite our mission quite frequently. And I'll even go further. For our independent marketing and sales associates, every year we have a theme. This year's theme is "Our time is now." And we write a manifesto around that. And I memorize and repeat that manifesto, and the people in the field repeat that manifesto. And so whether it is our mission or our annual theme, we do a lot of spoken word and we do a lot of repeating, and it's in all of our writings. The mission itself has some really important characteristics. One is that we provide the services and the tools to affordably live a just and secure life. So our mission says we are in the service business. We will create more than likely digital tools that will connect to humanity, to lawyers, to private investigators. The word affordably is critical. Okay, we are not a luxury good. We are looking to democratize justice and security. And instead of just talking about equal justice, we drop the word security in there because we are the second largest provider of identity theft and privacy management services. Privacy management is our fastest growing area of technological and consultative advice. People want to know, how do I live in a web world and not be surveilled on Google Chrome or by using Gmail? Are there alternatives? And we advise people on safe and secure alternatives. People will call us as a worried parent. I have a bullied child online, anonymous bullies. What do I do? What can I do to support my child? And we have both consultation as well as technological advice on how to get some control over that circumstance. Sometimes that spills over into the legal. A note from the law firm to your principal, okay, is different than saying, hey, some of the classmates are anonymously bullying online, and they just are like, oh yeah, that kids today. Two different worlds, being ignored again as a parent, being heard as a member of LegalShield. Okay, those are very different circumstances. So we continue to try and manifest through excellent technology the connectivity to humanity and do it on an affordable basis for all of our members.
I want to drill deeper on a couple of the things you said there. You talked about the product and the offering. I want to first touch on the product and then kind of get in on the tech side. But you don't manufacture the product. It doesn't sit on a shelf. It is a service-based business. How do you think about product innovation, product development in this service-based business? How does that role and those ideas fit within LegalShield?
Well, let me give you an example from ID Shield, and then I'll talk a little bit about LegalShield. ID Shield, I was starting to go there a little bit. Another thing that is of concern and is not the same as providing your Social Security, your credit cards, emails, and having that monitored at the credit bureaus or on the dark web, and then getting an alert if there's a problem. And God forbid you have a theft of your identity, we will do whatever it takes for as long as it takes to get you back to a good place, civilly and criminally. Reputation management is different. More and more adults, and especially young adults, because they've grown up on the web, they are finding, and Forrester did a study, 14% of adults have been denied employment or academic admission because of something found online.
And you're talking about personal reputation management.
Personal reputation. I'll give you an example. A young woman, I think 31 or 32 years old, was named the new editor of Vogue Junior. And I apologize, I do not remember her name. I have not had the pleasure of meeting her. But she never started that job because someone then came out to say a tweet when she was 17 was considered anti-Asian. Now, I'm not defending the tweet. I have not even read the tweet. What I'm saying is that she did something when she was 17, and I got to be honest with you. If my whole life was judged by what I did when I was 17, oops, we got some problems, Houston, because we all do stupid things when we're 17. Okay, we got hormones.
Yeah, now it's just out there and it's permanent.
And it can be used against you. Not in a court of law. I want to be very clear. People are tried and convicted in the court of popular opinion, sometimes by only 2, 3, 4 people, get something going. And this woman never started a very important job. I hope that she has found her way to something else in life. That's reputation management. So what do? Well, this is a different technology. It has to go look for the obvious. It didn't stay in Vegas. Is there a photo? Is there a video that you need to know about, that you need to delete, you need to manage? Okay. Increasingly, however, Wayne, it's that with all the passions that we have online, sometimes we feel more confident to say things. Sometimes we say things that are profane, vulgar, or offensive, and then we forget about it. We find comments that people have placed in places they don't even remember being, Imgur, Reddit, all these different, not necessarily Facebook, but sometimes Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever. And we help them see it and then manage, delete, modify, so that their life isn't ruined. In a court of law, if you are guilty and serve your time, then you are exonerated and you can't be tried a second time, right? But over here in the court of public opinion, that will be used against you forever, right? So we've grown in that regard. That's a new service that we developed. I mentioned cyberbullying as another. On the legal side, we continue to focus in two ways. One is on the technology. Our technology, we are responsible for connecting our members to their lawyer. And we just came out with an all-new mobile app that, quite frankly, was inspired by the experiences of telemedicine during the pandemic. We saw companies like Teladoc iterate very quickly and refine the best flow. When I created the mobile app in 2015, I was trying to replace the member card. We were literally sending millions of member cards in the United States Postal Service. And guess what? People lost them. They didn't have them when they needed them. So I said, my goodness, let me put it in the mobile phone. And the mobile app did one thing. It made a phone call. It knew you and it knew your law firm. Simple. We've come a long way since then. And not only with a mobile version, but in the next couple of weeks, a web app version, you come in and say, I need a consult. What area of law? We've been measuring the areas of law that people have been using for more than 2 decades. Could be traffic, could be estate planning. We define each one of those areas. Could be, a criminal issue. You choose your area of law. Then you do some level of description. You may need to, upload a document with your phone or a speeding ticket to have it included in the consultation. You can describe it, and elaborate. And then you choose. I would like to be contacted as soon as possible, or I'd like to be contacted tomorrow in this time block that's available. We check on the cell number, we check on the email, and then boom, we're off to the races. That technology is our North Star to slowly work with our law firms and to move that window to 15 minutes when you ask for as soon as possible, and to schedule in 15-minute increments. We're starting with a wider couple of hours, few hours, window, but we're going to get it tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. We're already in the first 3 weeks overwhelmed by how well this has been received. People are loving it. And almost half of our people are scheduling, not now, but in the future. We've never had that option before. So that is a technology change. In terms of the service itself, an area that we've begun to explore is credit counseling. When you have DaimlerShield and LegalShield together, we're not in the credit repair business. Quite frankly, it's a little scammy. If you look at it, a lot of people are being taken advantage of who are at their most vulnerable. We are going to be more in the tough love business, okay? The fact of the matter is, if you have a bad credit score, it means that you've taken on debt and you haven't treated it with respect. You've paid late, you've missed payments. Well, what do you got to do? Well, you have to earn more than you spend. And unless you're going to give yourself a raise, which you can do, by the way, if you join a direct sales organization, you could get a side hustle and start making some more money, then you need to look at your expenditures. The other area in law that we're expanding is and exploring is elder care. As you know, I have a mother who's 83, a stepfather who's 89. And this isn't anything other than wanting to know, how can I be the best son I can be as they now advance in their lives? Is there a need for becoming a guardian? Are the power of attorneys set up correctly? How do I get advice and counsel around issues like assisted living or nursing homes or independent living. These are all questions that we're beginning to develop out a greater service capability for LegalShield.
That's great. I love that you've looked at these kind of adjacent categories as entry points almost back into the core offering. So things that will ultimately or could possibly lead back to, the initial core offering. So I love looking at these different entry points. I think that's really, really smart. And also innovating on the tech front, making it easier to interact, to connect, to transact. And I think that's something that has also really characterized your career, is this, you kind of embracing, technology and really helping that to enhance and level up the product, the brand, and the customer experience. I think another kind of aspect where tech is impacting the channel is around kind of those transactions. So, we shop very differently now than we did even just a few years ago. We don't just go to one store or go to one website. We're going to go to platforms like Amazon, and others where we might learn a little more about the product. We go read the review. Amazon, I'm always amazed. It's the second largest search engine in the United States. It's the first stop in all of our purchase process. How are some of these new shopping platforms impacting your business, how people learn about you, find you, ultimately sign up for the service? What's this impact of these new technologies and platforms?
Yeah, so a couple of things I would say. One thing is we have multiple distribution channels, and so what do I mean by that? I'll give you an example. To fulfill our mission and to reach all people, we work with large employer benefit brokers. You may have heard of them: Marshall McLellan, Mercer, Aon, Willis Towers Watson, Gallagher. These are huge employee benefit companies, and they work with Amazon, Walmart. They provide a platform of healthcare, dental, vision, and these things called voluntary benefits, and legal and identity privacy are offerings in that space. So that is not something that a part-time independent associate could do. It takes a tremendous amount of both training as well as experience to be able to work in that world. So that is over here, right? Obviously, we have independent associates, and it is network marketing. We love this because this is legal and identity privacy, something that needs to be explained. It's still not necessarily common sense. Identity is probably easier. Legal still is like, I'm sorry, I've never heard of this, right? That's one of the challenges. So talking to your family, your friends, your colleagues, your community, it is a beautiful way to go. By the way, I want to start there with, they hadn't heard of it, okay? We do have right now a direct-to-consumer channel where people have issues and they're looking online. They aren't being contacted by an independent associate. All the more reason, by the way, that we need more independent associates to join our business. Hurry up, more and more, because there are people looking for what we do, but they're not being talked to by somebody that they trust and care for. We've learned that these are extremely different people, though. Okay, these are different lifestyles, different approaches and mindsets. So we've been able to grow all of our distribution, the direct sales, the direct to consumer, the employee benefits, year over year for my 7 years. We had all-time membership high. And the reason fundamentally is you don't have to have exclusivity to be successful in network marketing and direct sales. That may sound counterintuitive, but let me go further. If you have something unique that everyone doesn't know about and everyone doesn't get every day, direct sales is a powerful, powerful business opportunity because you're bringing the good news. So we've learned that we don't need to have exclusivity in order to have success in multiple channels. And again, at a couple of million members, we could double again, and we're still just scratching the scratch. We'd have a 33% penetration at that level of all households in the United States of America.
You mentioned the future of direct selling and kind of the important role that services can play in the future. Do you see that because more of the white space, the competitive environment, that it won't have, it won't be bumping up these other D2C brands, or the competition and the competitive landscape won't be as fierce because there's not as many in there? Am I understanding that right?
I think that having a multi-level marketing company in day trading cryptocurrency just feels like a train wreck. But it is the wild, wild west, and there's a lot of excitement that can be built around those things. But there's going to be regulation. There isn't in the world right now, and I worry about. I think that you should not have a business model that knowingly could do harm, and I do worry about online sports betting. I feel is the same way of day trading cryptocurrency. I just think that it's not the same as what we're trying to do and what many direct sales companies are trying to do. Build a high integrity, highly trained, highly motivated group of people that believe in what they do, and they keep sharing the good news with other people to make their lives better.
That's great. So I want to jump back to when you mentioned about your direct-to-consumer business. So is this something that there's a defined group that is going out and doing this, or is this happening kind of more organically, through, organic search or paid search? People are finding you, stumbling onto the website.
It's absolutely the latter. And it is something that we've done for the last 7 years. From the moment that I started, I've, expanded distribution with all areas growing. And the reason is that there are some areas that just were underserved. And
sure,
there are some people that really, really want to hear from a human being that they know and trust about what we do. And there are other people that seem to be misanthropes. They don't want to see any human beings ever, and they just live their whole life online. And those are extremely clearly defined. We've learned a lot about them over time, very, very distinct. And a lot of the people that are online also, we sometimes call 911. They have a real need right now. Biggest challenge there is, how do we help them understand that this is a relationship for a lifetime? This is a membership for a lifetime. So we spend a lot of time and attention in that regard there. So there's no grass greener on the other side. It's all just grass. Every part of our business has its own unique opportunities and challenges.
So how does your field deal with is there any perceived channel conflict? Do they feel that if there are these, customers or, purchases coming in through a direct to consumer or e-commerce channel, that it's somehow kind of taking commissions or sales away?
There's nothing constraining an independent associate from going out and talking to people all day long, every day, especially now that we've empowered them with fantastic technology. We have Prospect by LegalShield, with which they can send videos of various sizes to countless numbers of emails and text messages. They can be followed up. They know exactly when people open them and view them. They follow up with them. They can schedule 3-way calls. They can schedule Zooms. So the pandemic has empowered something we started way before that. And that is, you don't have to be in person to be able to grow your business, rapidly. We also give them LS Engage, LegalShield Engage, to be able to see exactly where everyone in their team is in terms of their progress for prospecting and follow-up, advancement and achievement. So we've given them the tools that are, quite frankly, infinite in possibility. The only real question is their own effort and their own belief to go and make things happen. We're extremely proud that in just the last 6 months, we've built over 25 $50,000 ring earners, brand new ring earners, earning $50,000 in the first part of this year. So the sky's the limit. There are no blockers. There are no blockers to people. You just have to know, is this a pond that is fertile for me to fish in? Is it this pond? And on the online space, we tried it. We gave leads to people that were online, and they were offended that they were contacted. It's a different pool. It's not a
sure, it is.
Right? Over here, it's completely fertile. And I got to say, to anyone that wants to know, wait a minute, is this a conflict? Is this an outrage? Do me a favor. And the next 10 people you meet, next 10 people on the street, stop each one and say, hey, have you heard about the legal app? And when they give you a funny look, that's the opportunity that stands before you in the direct sales organization. Because it's going to be you're going to probably go through 100 people and you're going to find 2 that know. 98 people, that's your market.
Yeah, still incredible awareness for so many of the products in the channel. An incredible opportunity for LegalShield as well. And I also think that illustrates the importance of segmentation and making sure that, we're treating different customers differently, that they're receiving different communications and campaigns. It's not a one size fits all. They each have different and unique needs. And we as the brand stewards and the messengers need to be really aware of that. I think another way that you've really embraced tech is with remote work. Long before 2020, you were a big advocate for remote work, really as a way to attract and retain the best talent, as you've mentioned, to put the best team that you possibly could together with the skills you needed at the moment that maybe weren't in your local geographic area. So, as we all look ahead to this possibility of a kind of a hybrid model where we might be in for a few days and home and remote work for a couple. What are some of the lessons that you've learned that have been really successful for you in again, embracing this remote work idea very early on?
I made the decision people can live where they want, and we were going to be using technology like we are today to work for all, when we first started, every other week I was in Ada, right? And the team would come in every other week, 20 times a year, if you will, 20 weeks. And now it's once a month because we're so much better at it. What's the insight to answer your question? The insight is focus on culture, focus on team building, focus on personal development. We as a team of 27 vice presidents and above that run this company, we break bread when we're in Ada together. We spend time on transparency and authenticity and vulnerability. We address any relationship issues proactively to make them constructive. We collaborate, we problem solve together. So it has everything to do with keeping the humanity now that you're using technology.
Sure. No, absolutely. I think that's a great point. So there still is this need for kind of physical, interactions, being in the same place at the same time in our protein forms, talking to one another. I think that really cements the relationships as well as the kind of the culture of each unique company. I want to shift to a final couple of questions around kind of how you think about some of the advice that you've received. So I read in an article that you got some pretty incredible advice from your dad about kind of two things to really focus on. Do you mind kind of sharing that little piece of advice that he gave you and how you continue to use it today?
Yeah, so my father was an entrepreneur. He went to the University of Oklahoma. He was a journalism major. He went into public relations. He went into corporate public relations, hated it. He started his own company, Bell Public Relations. It evolved over time. Again, he taught me how to put yourself in a position to say yes into Bell Publicom. He owned a printing company. He owned a cassettes recording company that recorded great speakers like Zig Ziglar and sold those, to the members that couldn't attend conventions and whatnot. And my father said, son, and he was the first person in his family to go to 4-year university to get a full bachelor's degree. He said, son, in life, there's only two things that you can control. The first one is your attitude, and the second is your effort. Your attitude should always be positive, and your effort should always be exemplary. And I try and live that to the best of my ability every day.
That's incredible. Yeah, I do think it's important. So much of success, is within our control, and how much I think in our careers perception is reality. I think that's really great advice. So last couple of questions. So as CEO of a large, fast-growing, tech-enabled company, what keeps you up at night?
Just trying to crack that code that I talked about before for every human being. We've been taught to think about law as unresponsive, unaccountable, inaccessible, and not affordable. And how do I get people on the other side of knowing what is the right thing to do and then doing it, becoming a member of this community? Because quite frankly, we all grow stronger as our community grows larger.
And so kind of the reverse side of the coin, what keeps you inspired? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, every single day, I'm just so grateful to be the servant CEO of a company that wants to make the world a better place. And I know that it may sound like pablum, but I can tell you that we all try and make a living, but we succeed at LegalShield. We succeed at LegalShield, and we make society better forever. We help people live free and worry less in their lives.
That's incredible. Jeff, thank you so much for being on Direct Approach. Thanks for all you do for everyone at LegalShield and everyone in the direct selling channel as well. Appreciate these amazing insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Direct Approach. Don't forget to register for DSU at dsu2021.com that begins next Monday, October 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern. We look forward to seeing you there.